Are you tired of sobriety that doesn't last or feel fulfilling? If the feeling is familiar, I get that. We all have been there. And I understand the pain of sobriety that doesn't last or feel fulfilling. The truth is that it hurts and it can feel exhausting. The good news is that there is solutions for every problem. And also there are solutions for sobriety that doesn't last or feel fulfilling. And in this video, I will reveal the number one principle that will help you to create sobriety that lasts and feels fulfilling. And ultimately, it will lead to real psychological freedom. And I also think that this principle is answer for many problems in your life, and it will solve multiple problems in your life. So let's get started. So in the beginning, I want to say that for those who don't know who I am, my name is Sammy, and in the last 5 years, I have been quitting 5 different addictions, and now I help professionals to create long-term sobriety that will lead to real psychological freedom. So, how to create sobriety that lasts and feels fulfilling and ultimately will lead to psychological freedom. So, the goal is to lasting sobriety, fulfilling, and psychological freedom. In order to do that, we have to really understand what sobriety is. And I truly think that the reason why people struggle to create sobriety that lasts or is fulfilling is that they don't simply can't answer for this question. People are over focused on the external sobriety. They over focus on quitting alcohol, but they forget the real meaning of sobriety. The real and the deeper meaning of sobriety doesn't mean the absence of some external substance, but it means that the mind is in the state of sobriety. It means that the sobriety is the state of consciousness. It means that the mind is in balance. It means that you are in harmony with yourself. You are sober from your negative thoughts, your negative emotions, your negative self-talk, and your limiting beliefs. And when you have that kind of inner sobriety, the outer sobriety will be a piece of cake. So now we understand what the real goal is. It's about creating this inner sobriety. And now we can understand what is the number one principle to create this sobriety that will last and it will feel fulfilling. So think about what we usually do when we face some serious problems. And I would say that usually we ask for help. We hire a coach or we hire a therapist or we hire some kind of professional. And don't be afraid, this is not sales talk why you have to hire a coach or some kind of professional. But the number one principle to create lasting and fulfilling sobriety is to develop your inner coach. The importance of learning to coach yourself in your sobriety is invaluable. And you can have the best coaches, the best therapists, but if you can't coach yourself in your sobriety, I think you will ultimately struggle. So developing your inner coach means that you become your own best friend. You are your own number one support partner, and you become your own biggest fan. Not in the narcissistic way, but in the way that you are just very supporting towards yourself. And yes, that's the number one principle to really create lasting sobriety and fulfilling sobriety. So let's cover some fundamentals of developing your inner coach. When we understand the fundamentals, we can know how to take the right action. So like we already talked about, developing your inner coach is about becoming your own best friend, being your own biggest support partner, and being your own biggest fan. Not in the narcissistic way, but in the supportive way. And also, we have to understand the goal of this inner coach. So, one of the root causes of every kind of addiction is that the person who has the addiction has very distorted relationship with himself. And the goal of inner coach or developing the inner coach is to build an extraordinarily healthy relationship with yourself. And and the inner coach is the way to restore that relationship. Because when we have really rich inner life, we will have a really good relationship with ourselves. But if we have very poor inner life, we talk ourselves very mean, very judgmental way. And also one of the main drivers of addiction is that the person who has the addiction have very loud inner critic. And then the outcome of having very loud inner critic is addictive behavior. And also it's very common of the life of the human being that we talk ourselves in a way that we will never talk to our best friends or even others. So it's about becoming very kind, very supportive, very encouraging, and very loving towards yourself. And when you have that kind of internal richness, it will be a piece of cake to be without alcohol. And also, it's a good note that addiction, sobriety is both psychological states. So we have to have some way to improve our psychology. And the inner coach is the one way to do that. So that was some fundamentals of this. The goal to build healthy relationship with yourself, being your own best friend, and being your own biggest support partner and your own biggest fan. So now it's time to turn your inner hater to an inner coach. And the first principle is modeling. So I can guarantee that you already have some people in your life that are very nice to you, very, very motivating or encouraging. And the goal is to start to model these people. It can be your friend, your family member, maybe your coach or therapist, or it can be some person that you just look up to. And the game is to start to model that person. Turn that person voice into your inner voice. Speak with the same voice, same tone, use same words, and even you can use same principles that this person uses in his life. And the modeling can be a really powerful principle. And also, if you really want to simplify this whole process to develop your inner coach, is that you can only pick some very good coach and learn the principles of that coach and start to use those principles in your internal life. And that is very simple way to develop your inner coach. Find a good coach, learn the principles, and start to use those principles in your internal life. So the second principle is awareness. So it's about becoming aware your current internal chatter. And this is very crucial thing to do. No matter how many principles you bring your life, if you can't become aware of your current internal chatter, then it's really hard to dissolve these negative internal patterns, and your life ultimately will don't going to change. So it's becoming aware, and also it's having the attitude of being very curious about your internal chatter. You start to ask questions that why you think this way, where this comes from, and also the way to interrupt your inner hater is to use humor. When we use humor in a situation, in a situations where we don't usually use humor, or situations that are very serious, we will interrupt our inner hater. You can say, when you catch yourself from thinking some negative thoughts or limiting beliefs, you can say some kind of joke that, oh, it's just my inner hater showing off today. Must be an auditioning for a comedy show. When you use humor, you will break the pattern, and you will not going to take that inner hater seriously. So concluding the second principle, becoming aware of your current negative patterns, be curious, and use humor to interrupt your inner hater. So the third principle is something that an excellent coaches do this very well, excellent salesmen do this very well, and the common thing between excellent coaches and salesmen are that they ask an excellent questions. And the quality of questions that you ask from yourself is the perfect way to change the whole nature of your internal life. For example, if I ask a question that how to quit alcohol, then my internal life will be full of thoughts that will focus on the problem of alcohol. And it also, affects your emotional life if you focus more on the problem. But if I ask a question, how I can create a sobriety that is fulfilling and it will last, and ultimately it will lead to psychological freedom, then I will focus on the outcome, and my internal life will be full of thoughts that focus on the outcome. And also, when I focus those kind of thoughts, I will feel way better, because it focus more on the positive things. So changing the questions that you ask from yourself is the perfect way to change your focus. And when we change our focus, we will change our emotional life. And also, I did a PDF for this video, and there is more practical tips how you can start to use these principles, and there is really good practice how you can start to use this third principles of questions. And so definitely check that out. And also, the reason why asking yourself better question is so powerful is that usually in life we have a lot of assumptions about things. We just think about some things, and then we assume that these things are true. And asking yourself questions are the way to break these assumptions. And also, these assumptions are called as limiting beliefs. So asking yourself questions and questioning your assumptions is the way to see through the lies of your own mind. And it's the way to not identify with your mind, but understanding that everything that goes in your mind, it's not the truth. And asking and questioning yourself is the way to do that. So the next time when you catch your mind selling you a lie that that I'm not somehow enough, question that and ask more questions and start to dig deeper on that belief. And I will guarantee that if you start to ask more questions, you will come a conclusion that, okay, this doesn't make any sense. And then mission accomplished and you broke the assumptions. So that's a really powerful way to not to identify with your mind and break your assumptions and also change the whole focus and the whole nature of your internal life. So yes, the fourth principle is listening with presence. This is almost same than the awareness, but it's a little bit different. So nowadays we even struggle to listen to other people. So how we can say that we listen to ourselves, which is way harder than to listen to other people. So it's about learning to listen yourself, what your mind is saying, what your heart is saying, and not just listening some unconscious chatter, but truly listening yourself very deeply. You have to listen yourself with patience, with curiosity, and the mind has to be really quiet. And when you can have that kind of listening skills, you will make better choices and decisions in your life. So that's a little note about learning to listen yourself. And the fifth principle is something really profound, and this is literally a principle or practice how you can be sober from your own mind. And this is very spiritual concept. I learned this from the Gnostic teachings, but I think this can be really beneficial in the game of sobriety. And little note about this that intellectually this is really hard to explain. And if you want to understand this fully, you have to experience it. So I will do my best at explaining this. And the fifth principle is self-observation. So if I'm thinking something, do I then self-observe myself? No, I am just thinking, but self-observation is about being aware where your awareness goes. So it's about being aware what you think and being aware in the way that you are not identifying with your thoughts or your emotions. And it's kind of that you remember who you really are. You are the essence, the soul, and not this nonsense that goes in your mind or in your life. You remember that you are not your thoughts, your emotions, even your name, your own ideas about yourself or your mistakes or even your achievements or things like that. But you remember that you are the observer behind all that. And that is literally the practice to be sober from your own mind. And also it's a very beneficial thing to have in the development in your inner coach, because it basically helps you to destroy the inner hater. And when the inner hater is off, it's easier to develop the inner coach. So I want to give you a little metaphor about this. So you can think of it that you have this internal city inside you that is made up from thousands of different thinkers. If I just think, then I kind of feel that I'm a part of this internal city, that you are the citizen of this internal city. But if you observe yourself, you watch this place from the higher place. You can think of it that you watch Earth from the space and you just understand that this is some kind of simulation, that it's not that real and you don't have to take it that so seriously. So in the same way, when you self-observe yourself, you see through the dramas of these different thinkers, and you are not identifying them, but you just observe them and you understand that it's not that real. So how to be practical with this? Well, you can think of it that you kind of meditate your way through life, and you kind of meditate, and self-observation is about meditating eyes open. You just observe everything, but you are not judging anything, or you are not identifying with anything. And if you want to really experience this, I really recommend to practice consistent meditation. It will help a lot. But basically, you are just observing your awareness, your thoughts, and you are not identifying with anything. So that's the fifth principle, how you can develop your inner coach. This can be really life-changing if you start to be consistent with this. So the sixth principle is about having certain attitude when you develop your inner coach. So we want to self-observe ourselves, but we also want to self-observe ourselves with certain attitude. And it means that you face your internal life with compassion and empathy. Because the problem is that if we can't have compassion or empathy towards ourselves, then when we have a negative thought or limiting belief, we will have a reaction to that. And you kind of have a double pain. You have the negative thought and the reaction to that thought. But if you can have compassion towards that negative thought, then you're not going to have reaction to that. And when you don't react to things, things will pass and they don't will come back. So it's really important to learn to have this inner attitude of compassion and empathy. It will help a lot. And also, this is especially very present in the realm of addiction, that we have a lot of parts or some parts that we don't really like. And I think every human have these kind of things. And also it's about learning to create acceptance and compassion these parts that we don't like. And when you create that kind of thing, the life will be way more easier, more fulfilling, and it will be very easy to be without addictions. And also, when we talk about developing your inner coach, it's really important to create this inner attitude that is very supportive, very motivating, very gentle, very nice, and very loving. And it's about learning to have that kind of attitude, no matter what goes in your external life, or no matter what kind of mistakes you did. But you are always your number one support partner. So have the attitude of motivation, supportive, loving, and niceness. So that was the 6 different principles how to develop your inner coach. This is something that you have to be very practical if you want to reap the results of this, and you have to practice in every day, every moment. And if you have been having the inner hater 20 years, it can take some time to develop your inner coach. But it comes to down how consistent and how much you put effort to this. And like I already said, addiction, sobriety are both psychological states. So we have to have some tools to develop or improve our psychological states. And there is many ways to do that, but I think the inner coach is really effective and even really easy way to start to improve your psychological states. You become aware your current states, and also it's the way to improve and dissolve those states. And a little conclusion about this video, that you know many people can have a lot of money or a lot of material success, but they lack internal richness. Internally, they are like a homeless person. And the inner coach is the way to develop that inner richness. Who can truly say that they can enjoy their own being, own presence? Think about what most people do in the first thing when they wake up. They start to think their problems or their flaws or things about that stress about them. So the inner coach is the way to restore that healthy relationship with yourself, that you are not anymore thinking about your flaws or problems in the first thing of the morning. So my sincere hope is that you can create your own inner coach with these principles of this video. And lastly, check that PDF, and it will help a lot if you really start to practice with those practices that are in that PDF. So thank you for watching this video, and bye bye.